What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Let's Talk Movies. I'm Brad.
And I'm Miguel.
And this is the kind of final, I guess you could say this is the final film in the original Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, but this is our top 3 moments from Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, or A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 6, or Elm Street 6, however you want to call this movie, because for some reason they decided to go with something different for the last film of the original franchise, which
And they went big.
Did they, though? That's the eternal question. Did they, though?
Big because doesn't mean good.
This was supposed to be like, hey, the big finale event. I mean, when I think about like the ending, the original ending of some of our main horror villains, like this movie seems so, the way Freddy goes out for this franchise, because we've got New Nightmare, but that's kind of a spin-off, really. That's not really a part of the original franchise. We've got Freddy versus Jason, which technically, if you really want to get technical about it, you could say that Jason decapitating Freddy and then walking out of Crystal Lake holding him by the head when he like smiles and winks like that, that's technically the end of that character for the original franchise, because again, technically Freddy versus Jason is canon. But of solo Elm Street movies, this is how Freddy goes out, sticking the pipe bomb in his chest and seeing his head explode and 3 sperms come out of him, essentially. Like that's Dream Sperm. That's how this character goes out. It's so lackluster and so stupid for a way to kill off arguably the most iconic character in slasher film history. Like, it just, I don't know, man. It's
pretty cheap, I'll be honest.
This is an interesting movie. And admittedly, like, it had been a few years since I watched Freddy's Dead. Just because it had been a while. It's probably been since like 2020 or so, 2021, when we would have done this franchise. And we watched it for the when we did our Purely and Simply Evil episode.
For the content we did.
That would have been the last time that I watched this. And that's been 2 or 3 years. And I don't know, just like from the very beginning, when we jumped from the thought-provoking Frederick Nietzsche quote to the welcome to primetime now. Welcome to primetime, bitch. I was like, okay, yep, I remember how this is gonna go. Yeah, like it just, and I ironically, believe it or not, I started rewatching it the other night, and I told Miguel before we started filming, I fell asleep. I fell asleep in the last like 20 minutes of the movie, and I woke up on the main title screen at like 11:30 p.m. and I was like, I need to go to bed. And I'll finish this tomorrow. So
I told Brad the other day that I had a really tough time trying to remember what I saw with Freddy's Dead, because it was just it just didn't seem too memorable for me until I watched it again recently, to the point where I was like, oh yeah, I forgot this is exactly how it happened. It took me back to like, wow, we really tried 3D in this movie, and that's what really put me there.
Yeah, the 3D thing is terrible. Like, let me say this. Let me start by saying that the concept, or some of the concepts of what they were going for in Freddy's Dead, are cool concepts. They're new concepts, right? Like, the when we see the opening with the concept of like the mass murder of what they call mysterious deaths and suicides in Springwood, and the parents are all kind of in this mental health,
but like one survivor and
like they're in this mental health psychosis and this like depreciated mental state because their kids have either died or gone missing, or like Freddy using the last Elm Street kid to expand his reach. Like that, like those concepts are kind of cool. It's the execution of those concepts in this movie that are just like, it's just garbage sauce.
They're pretty rough
the entire time. And that, like logistically, it starts to not seem logical anymore. Like, the parent thing was kind of cool. When you see the execution of that, like the teacher teaching to a room of nobody, like, bro, come on now. Like, that would be.
You think this would be like headline
the
news? You know what I mean?
Like the FBI would have shut down this town or something at
Yeah.
this point if there were.
It's almost like
that
that
many people going missing.
Simpsons movie, where like the governor just like
Yeah,
put
the
Springfield
dome.
in a bowl.
Yeah.
And the GPS was like, on your left you will see nothing, and like they just removed it from the map. Like it seems illogical for like a town just to like lose all of its kids, which by the way would cause a stir in of itself.
Oh,
and let alone have all the adults and family members like be in some type of like hypnotic like reclusiveness, and just not like travel to like your nearest or national news. Yeah, it seems too far-fetched.
Right. Well, and like first of all, if that was really happening, there would be no more. There would have been like we hear about John Doe, which John Doe. That should show you right there how much thought process went. That's his name. That is the lead character's name. Is John Doe.
I think they had. I think they had something. I think they were thinking of something there, but again, the execution of it.
Yes, because it's supposed to be this like amnesia thing. I don't know, whatever. But as soon as we start to see the here's what could have been cool. There would have been no more Elm Street kids. Anybody with children would have gotten out of Dodge immediately after all of this really started happening. But yeah, I think it would have been cool if Springwood was just kind of this abandoned, like you see about like, I think there's a town in Ohio that's just, it looks like people just left all of their belongings, like their cars, their food in the fridge, like just immediately had to leave. And I mean, we see that, and it's weird, mysterious. Like that would have been cool if we would have seen houses that people just packed up and left Springwood because they feared for their children's lives, and they couldn't explain what was happening because it's supernatural. It's weird. Like that would have been cool if Springwood was just kind of this ghost town, and anybody left is an adult that is just severely like, and just in a terrible mental state. Depressed, their children have either died or went missing, and there's the law has never really been able to the police have never been able to explain it or anything like that. Would have been cool, but instead they gave us Roseanne Barr, literally a Roseanne cameo at the town fair, and people are just kind of wandering around. We get the teacher like teaching to a class of nobody. Like that wouldn't go down the same way. There's no way. That wouldn't happen.
Well, kind of like the rules of the Freddyverse, you kind of got like suspend any type of like disbelief within the film itself.
And even, I mean, when it comes to the main cast of characters, like I pretty much like 6 minutes after the first dream sequence, I'm bored out of my mind. Like, and then you have Doc who starts to talk about like the dream demons, and I'm just like, but like by that point, there's a good like 30 or 40-minute stretch after the first dream sequence. We don't even see Freddy. Like we're just with these characters, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, honestly, if someone wanted to say, and I've heard some people argue this, if you wanted to say that Freddy's Dead wasn't even canon to the rest of the franchise, I couldn't argue with you. I really couldn't. I mean, there were ways that like they did. There were some cool homages to the rest of the franchise. During the ending credits sequence, the whole montage of all of the different Freddy moments, like that was cool. But overall, I think they were done with Elm Street. They were done with, they were done with the character. I think they wanted to, New Line Cinema became the house that Freddy built. That was kind of their nickname. He had given them all he needed to, and they wanted to move on to other projects. And I think this whole movie just feels like they were like, sure, yeah, let's do it.
Let's kill them all.
It literally plays like a Looney Tunes cartoon, like Freddy is Bugs Bunny or something. If you look at it through that lens, it literally plays off like a Looney Tunes cartoon. The cinematography, the dialogue, Freddy's dialogue, the way that Freddy exists in this movie, there's very little that even remotely feels like something you would have gotten in part 2 or in Dream Warriors or even in 4 and 5. And I mean, we've excuse me, we talked about this in our previous 2 videos. Like, I said that I slightly prefer Elm Street 5 to Elm Street 4. I could flip-flop depending on which one I watched. Like, and some people might find that crazy, and everybody's got their personal opinion, but like 4 and 5 compared to Freddy's Dead, I mean, like, there's not even a comparison. Do you agree?
No, I agree wholeheartedly.
This is its own. Whatever argument you can make for 4 or 5 being better or worse than the other, Freddy's Dead is still light years below that. It's probably the worst film of the franchise. Like, we're being honest. And again, that doesn't mean it doesn't have some redeeming moments, as we're going to talk about.
Yeah, the list we have, like, there's obviously moments that like redeem it, but
and again,
too far and too between.
Conceptually, I don't hate everything they were trying to do, but it just feels like I'm watching a cartoon that happens to have gore in it. Like, I don't know, man. So this is our top 3 moments from the finale, the big epic finale of Freddy Krueger.
The subpar finale of Freddy Krueger.
Oh man, it's like, it's like they took these really cool fresh ideas and then just like crapped out on it. Like, it was supposed to be the big final confrontation, and it just doesn't feel. Freddy's Dead feels like it felt very lackluster. Yeah. It just there's something that just doesn't work, And then they try to throw the 3D thing, and I'm like, this is ass. Like, why? What's the point? What are we gaining from this? Anyways,
what's your first top moment of Freddy's Dead then? Because I'd love to hear that now at this point.
My first, again, we haven't really been ranking these as our top, as our main, like the 3 of them in any order, just named them kind of in order of the film. The opening dream sequence, John Doe's dream sequence at the very beginning of the movie, where he's in the airplane and the plane is obviously having issues. He's nervous about being in the plane. The way he's reacting to what's happening makes me think that he's had this dream before. Like he almost seems to know, like, oh, like he's more annoyed than he is like actually scared. Like, he knows something's about to happen, but he's ejected from the plane. He ends up in his bed. The house is falling. And as the house is falling, that's when we get introduced to Freddy for the first time, which is just...
We get Broomstick Freddy, guys.
We even hear, like, the Wizard of Oz. Da, 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 da. Like, we hear the Wizard of Oz thing happening. Freddy's on the broomstick, and he's, I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too. And, like, the minute he says that, it's like, oh, my God, what are we doing?
We knew what we were going with.
Really?
We knew exactly what we were
getting. What are you doing, man? In the last movie, he called his mom a bitch. And now this time we're
well, at that point, anything's free game,
Yeah, like I don't know what's going on, man. But that the house is falling. It ends up, he ends out, or the house ends up on the ground. He's in the street. I will say the transition between each setting of the stream is cool because it does feel dreamlike. It's weird, and it's like we're in the air, and then he falls. And we're in the bedroom in the air again, also falling. Then we're on the street. And it's like the switch between the different settings of that dream sequence. Those are cool. Like, and that's one of the reasons I added this as one of my top 3 moments, because I'm like, that is kind of a cool dream sequence. Like, it's one of the better dream sequences of the franchise for me, I think.
But then we get,
they did do that very well.
Fucked dream sequences, like, later on.
Yeah, there's some weird ones in here too. Yeah, pretty terrible.
Which furthered the point of, like,
the power glove.
Yeah, where, Freddy's rules and Nightmare on Elm Street just didn't fucking exist. We get to, I think, my favorite scene, which was the knockoff version of Freddy 3, of Dream Master, where the entire group is traveling back to Springwood, and they continuously are getting into an eternal loop. Them driving around trying to find where they're going.
That's a good one.
And then you get to, I think it was Carlos who took the map, and all you get is just a giant red paint of "you're fucked," and it was just really funny to see that because you got that like 3 more times, if I'm not mistaken, of like Freddy just putting paint tags everywhere. But I mean, it's obviously the same thing as what happened to Allison and her boyfriend, and I think in Dream Masters.
It's it's the same thing.
Yeah,
same idea. I will say it feels very long though. Like it almost feels too long
for the loop
in Freddy's Dead. Yeah, it's like okay. I feel like it happens multiple times over the course of like 20 minutes. It's like, all right, how many times are you going to see them go by the statue?
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. Like, and I think the statue, I believe it says something like the kids will prevail or something like that. Like,
they definitely
didn't.
Like one of them did. All of them died.
A couple of them did. 2 of them did.
Yeah.
2 of them did. Plus Doc, which is cool. I like Doc. He's a neat character. But yeah, that's a good one, man. And it's again, there's a line in this movie when I forget the character's name. I would have to look it up. Like that's how forgettable these characters' names are. I don't even remember what they are.
Really though, I had to remember the one I mentioned. Yeah. The deaths are cool, but I have another one in there too.
The one that he taunts her in her dream about her like weird pedo dad who like touches her weird and stuff when he's like, name? give daddy some sugar, like that guy.
Yeah.
I forget what her name is. Cool character. She was one of the few characters I actually liked in the movie. She ended up being a good character.
Thought her yeah.
But and she survives, which is cool. But in that moment when she's fighting Freddy in her dream, she grabs his arm and twists it back and says something like, "This is my dream, it's gonna go how I want it." And he jokingly says, "Your dream, but my rules," or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was almost like, is that like almost and the camera's really close to his face and he's talking and he kind of looks over that way. I'm like, was that a low-key fourth wall break? Like was that a Deadpool moment? Because like he's like even what you said with I know the kid within the map, when the map multiplies, I know he was asleep. But we see in this movie, we start to see glimpses of this in Dream Warriors. But this movie especially, things like Freddy is able to manipulate things in the real world in this movie. Yeah. And he even starts to, when he starts killing off the main cast of characters, his daughter realizes that like he's erasing them from existence in the outside world.
Which again,
that's new. That's something
stupid rule.
We haven't tackled that yet in this franchise. So like
we probably started like 4 more new rules in the Freddy franchise for the final Freddy movie. Does that make sense? Do you see how like kind of idiotic that sounds with the fact that like this is Freddy's like technically last franchise movie, but let's throw some more rule breaks in there.
Yeah,
it seemed cheap.
I mean that scene was not. I mean, I like the scene, but that wasn't one of my main 3. But I wanted to bring that line up because I thought that this last watch I was like, that's almost like kind of a Deadpool. Like I'm aware of the fact that we've written the rules of this 6,000 times over the course of 6 movies.
Even
you know what I mean?
Even before that moment, I mean, my other favorite moment that in this film was Freddy's torture of Carlos whenever he
the ear
cut his ear off and he was deaf.
That was one of mine as well.
You also have a moment where Freddy turns back to the camera and kind of goes like telling us to like shush. I mean, that's technically a fourth wall break because he's telling like that almost feels like he's telling the audience to stay quiet.
He really does kind of feel like Deadpool in this movie. Like it's kind of like it's over the top. Even the ear thing, like the ear thing is cool, but it's also kind of dumb. Like even the long the long Q-tip that he puts in his ear when he's like he shoves the Q-tip like in one ear and it comes out the other side. Like it's stupid, but it works in this context, you know?
Yeah. And I thought it was really neat how, well, again, it sucked that they had to torture Carlos, you know, considering he's deaf, but it was just the fact that he used his own device for hearing against him. and made it much worse than what it was actually
Yeah.
intended to be used for, and that ended up being like his death,
The opposite.
which I thought was pretty cool. And I thought the mutated earpiece was just so gnarly. It was so gross, but I was just like, that's so awesome though. But then obviously we get to the point where, Freddy, blows his head up and has his witty one-liner, but then like Carlos disappears in the real world, which made zero sense for me too.
Yeah.
Because like before you had Freddy like killing these people and they just died right there, like in real life. But here he just kind of disappears and ends up trapped in the television like a poltergeist kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like it's just so interesting and it traces back to like what you said whenever he was fighting the other girl, and he was literally stating that like, these are my rules. Like it really does mean that like these are his rules. He can do whatever the fuck he wants, because all these people there's just so many ways that these people like came to their end, and that was being traced back and forth to the dream world and stuff like that. So
well, to piggyback off what you just said, and I have a thought on, because the Carlos' death, the ear thing, was one of mine as well. But there's something, another line that he says, I forget the full quote of what happens, but after John Doe's death scene, after he cuts the parachute and he falls on the spikes, he that's the super Bugs Bunny moment. He pushes the spikes out and then he stops and he looks right at the camera and he's like, whew, or something like that, but he says something like, we see John Doe's, that the CGI is just garbage juice, but his soul like leaves and like goes into Freddy's body, and Freddy says something like, I know where you're going, and he's like, he makes that weird face, and the makeup looks really god awful in that moment, and he like rubs his
the
belly.
Best Freddy
No, it was not. It's my least favorite Freddy makeup of the franchise. But he says, I know where you're going, and he rubs his belly or something. And as a viewer, I'm sitting there going, where's he going?
Yeah,
share with the class. Like I don't understand. Like, what do you even mean?
We would love to know.
I don't even understand where is he going? Like, what are you talking about? It doesn't really make any sense. So yeah, like that. That's a whole other topic. But the ear thing, the kill is cool, and the concept of like him, it's like the opposite. It's supposed to make him hear, and he ends up hearing too much. That with the pin dropping, all that was cool. But that's another example where it's so cartoony. It's so like Mickey Mouse, like a classic Disney or classic Looney Tunes cartoon, where he's after he cuts his ear and he doesn't have the hearing aid anymore. Like when he's walking around the boiler room and Freddy's like, like he's like dancing behind him and like all this silly stuff, and he's looking at the camera and going like this and running like that kind of thing. When he brings out the chalkboard, like the expanding chalkboard and stuff, that's kind of cool. And if he would have just been scraping and it was really intense and scary, like that's one thing. But go back and watch that scene. Freddy is going buku wild in that scene. I mean, he's like, there at one point, it like I can't even recreate it without looking stupid. Like he's holding up the thing and he's got the glove and he's going like it's so dumb. Like it's such a strange like mixture of tones. And I know Rachel Talalay, who is the director, she's been on the Elm Street franchise since the very beginning. She is a huge, if you're a big time Elm Street fan, you know who Rachel Talalay is. One of the big New Line people. She's been with Freddy from the very beginning, since his inception in the original 1984 film. But she felt that Elm Street 4 and 5 didn't have enough comedy, and she wanted to bring more of a comedic element to the character, which, again, okay, cool. But
was that what the fans wanted, though? Took
it too over the top silly? Like, it's he's killing someone, but like it's almost to the point where like it takes you out of the horror of it. Like it takes me out of the scene because what he's doing is so silly. Or
like this isn't horror at all.
Like every two, in part 1 and 2, when you hear him kind of giggle or laugh at something, it's creepy.
Mm-hmm.
It's dark. It's sadistic. In this movie, it feels like every single time we see Freddy, he's like every 2 seconds. I mean, and then you have the one-liners, like we were talking about the opening dream sequence after John Doe falls down that hill, which, first of all, we watched John Doe fall out of the sky. We watched John Doe fall in the house. Nothing can be. He falls down that hill for like 7 minutes. Like, he literally, every bone in his body would have been shattered if he would have really fallen down that hill like that.
Yeah, John Doe
he
got
fell
like
down that hill
heavily,
constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of his things, all of the ways Freddy tortured him were all falling. The parachute, the house, and the house thing happened multiple times where the house is falling. The plane, but anyways, even like the one-liners when he rolls down the hill, he gets hit by the bus, his face is getting like smashed into the bus after the weird Bob Shea cameo that didn't even make any sense. And
I didn't mind the Bob Shea cameo. It was funny.
It was kind of funny. But then that's like we get the
no screaming while the bus is in motion,
like that thing. And
when he gets hit.
Yeah, like he's laughing every 2 seconds in this movie, and it's like the laugh doesn't matter as much when it happens all the time. Like, the silliness isn't as effective when it's just overly silly all the time, and it feels overly silly all the time in this movie.
Did you feel that way? Did you feel that way whenever the video game Freddy came in? Because I wrote that as like, my third favorite moment was
the Freddy kill. My favorite moment. I don't like.
I thought it was pretty funny. Actually. It was actually one of those like, it was one of those things. It was one of those Freddy moments, especially like Freddy's Dead, where it's like, you kept introducing me to like, just wait until MTV Freddy. MTV Freddy is gonna be stupid. So whenever I finally met MTV Freddy, it was like, oh, okay, dude, this is fun. Like, this is all sorts of fun. But like the entirety of the game sequence, he's just saying shitty one-liners after shitty one-liners to the point where like it got way too comedic, and it like, again, this didn't feel like a scary movie in the slightest. So like I wasn't like at all like expecting anything scary to come out. Just Freddy having fun with this guy, and it's literally what we got. Like, you want to talk about Looney Tunes? Like, that was a strict like Looney Tunes soundbite situation. That whole dream sequence, all the way up until Freddy power gloves him into the demon's rectum, or so to speak, whatever that was.
Here's what I don't like about that sequence. Okay, if you're gonna have Freddy play the video game, whatever, that's fine. But when it cuts back when they're in Nancy's house, because again, Nancy's house
have to bring Nancy's
still
house.
relevant in this movie.
Yeah.
When they're in Nancy's house and it's kind of abandoned and stuff at this point, when we see him like boing 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 boing, boing like around the house, I'm like, okay, I'm taking out. Like, I don't care. Like,
at that point, like, I think at that point I kind of was like falling asleep a little bit in the film whenever we initially watched it, actually.
And again, they're asleep. That's the whole point of what's happening in the franchise. When they're asleep, Freddy can do those things to them. If he cuts you, you actually get a cut, right? But since when? I know the sleepwalking thing in Dream Warriors, that was different because he's a sleepwalker. Like, that's the point. But since when are they actually doing the things they're doing in their dreams? Like, that doesn't make sense. Even the Dream Warriors thing. Like, you're not actually, if that their dream powers wouldn't make any sense if they're actually doing those things in the real world while they're asleep. Why is it suddenly he's actually bouncing around and stuff like that? Like, that's the kind of things that just don't, it just doesn't add up. It just doesn't make sense at all.
I hope the people like watching or at least understanding where we're coming from, because I don't want you guys to come in the fucking comments and be like, oh, we obviously didn't understand the fucking rules in that particular movie. It's like, no, this, like, the general consensus for like every Nightmare fans understands that like the rules made 0 sense and at all.
Right. And that's not even a I'm not giving it any hell for that. Like, it's fun. It's this franchise is a blast, and even the bad ones, even Freddy's Dead, even Part 5, like, I still somewhat enjoy watching them. I don't want to watch them all the time. I don't want to watch them like I watch Part 1 and Part 2 and Part 3, you know. But I still enjoy watching them every now and then. It's been a few years since I watched it. I'm glad I watched it. I don't want to watch it again for another 2 or 3 years, probably. You know,
maybe when I think it's probably gonna be better than the fifth
we
time
do
around.
something else with it on the channel. Who knows? But never say never. But you know, but it's still fun to watch. It just doesn't. It just doesn't carry the same weight that the other films do, even with this being the big finale, like, you know. And another thing with the whole, which we'll kind of talk about this more in a minute, because I wanted to get your opinion on something actually that's slightly unrelated to our top 3 moments. But even when we get to the finale, which again, the final fight scene, the big finale fight between Freddy Krueger and his daughter, is not on my list, if that tells you anything.
Even then, like the plot twist of John Doe not being the son of Freddy, but instead the daughter of Freddy, it just seemed as if like it just seemed like such a cheap way to go about the franchise's end. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. First of all, by the time we get to the end of the movie and we have the 2 girls and Doc, they act like when Doc grabs his sweater and brings it out of the dream, they act like this is some major epiphany. And yes, maybe to the characters it is, but to the audience members, it's like,
Nancy did that.
They did this in literally every movie. Like, this is not new information. And they bring it up and talk about it for like 10 minutes, and it's like,
as if it's like some
bringing him into the real world. That's like, they did that constantly, bringing him into the real world. Like we've done that already. Why are we acting like
that was even brought up in Freddy versus Jason, as if like
that's literally how they planned for them to fight. That's the entire plot of the movie, is bringing Freddy into the real world so that Jason will kill him. Like, you know, so it annoys me that they act like it's this whole epiphany. But again, talking about the rewriting rules thing, and suddenly things are different when they bring Freddy into the real world. And, you know, his daughter goes in there and...
but not before the Freddy glasses.
Of course, whatever. When Katherine goes in there and gets her dad, and she brings him out, and they're in the weird cage thing of the youth center. I don't know. What's stupid. Why the hell is he human?
And then he transforms consistently into Freddy.
Straight up Robert Englund laying on the ground, and I'm like, why? Why does he look like that? And then 2 seconds later, he's burnt up Freddy again. I'm like, what is this? Like, did you put any thought process into this? If you brought him out of the dream and he's human, he's in one form or the other. If you're gonna make him Robert Englund, just leave him as a normal looking human being.
What was the thought process in making Robert Englund in the film if it wasn't going to be Freddy's makeup? Because it made sense for Robert to be in, you know, Robert to be Robert and the Robert and the robot chicken flashback, but then you have him like human and in the end, almost as if.
But then 2 seconds later, he jumps back and he's burnt Freddy again. It's like, what, really? So I don't know. Whatever. My third favorite moment actually was Katherine's dream when she's looking for Freddy in her dream, and you know, we've seen bits and pieces of the flashback, and which really, if you give it a ton of thought, that kind of gives away the idea that, I mean, we know that that's Freddy, obviously, you know, before he died, like, we know that. Yeah. And if you see it's a little girl chasing, or like he's chasing, it's like, okay, duh, it's his daughter. Like, you know, you could see that plot twist coming from a mile away. But we see the whole thing play out. Freddy's playing with his daughter in the yard. It's Robert Englund, no makeup, no nothing. This is pre-death. and her mom stumbles upon, which first, again, if your husband was a serial killer and a pedophile that was doing all of these crazy things that you know have been happening around your city, it's your house. Why did she not know that all of that stuff was like in their basement? Because like, she stumbles upon it and she's suddenly all like, I mustn't tell.
Oh my God.
I won't tell. It's like, bro, what do you haven't walked in your basement? I mean, he's got like,
well, it's like some places are there for their husbands. Some are places. People have their own places, man. Calm down.
So you're telling me he had a serial killer man cave going on? Like,
some marriages are like that. I don't know. Like some men have their man cave.
But anyways, we're seeing it from the little girl's perspective, and then suddenly it switches to adult Katherine, right? And we get Freddy's MO slightly shifts a little bit in this movie, because we get the line where he sees Katherine, the two of them are speaking. She walks right up to him without fear, like when she realizes that he's her dad. And he says, they took you away from me, but I made them pay. I took all their children away from them. But now
did that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, technically, yes, that makes sense.
Like the timeline didn't really add up there, honestly.
But if you really want to go with that, it does make sense. But you have to ask yourself, it's like it's like the eternal question of, is Michael Myers like, do you want them to be brother sister? Do you not want them to be brother sister? Like, it's like that same kind of thing. Like, do you want Freddy to have gone after the kids of Elm Street because it was like as revenge of the parents who did that to him? Or do you want it to be because of his daughter? I think...
Which, again, the first time we're ever hearing of the daughter story.
Yeah. This kind of paints it as a little bit of both. Like, yes, he was going after the kids anyways, and it's kind of his revenge on the parents, but also after he was found out and he was caught, they took the daughter away from him. Like, I don't hate it, but I also don't really love it either. And then, we see other things throughout that dream sequence, like... it's one of those final two dream sequences from Katherine. I was gonna ask you, do you like when we get the whole the montage of seeing Freddy at different points in his life? Like, we see him in the classroom.
It was stupid.
And he's like strangling the mouse.
Because what are we doing? Why are we trying to like?
They reference the part 4 thing or the part 5 thing, whichever one it is. The whole they're like, son of 1,000 maniacs, son of 100 maniacs. We get the Alice Cooper cameo, which was actually kind of sick. I actually kind of like that moment. It's stupid, but I kind of like it. Like, Alice Cooper is Freddy's dad, and he comes in. He's in the basement. Freddy's like cutting his stomach and stuff in the basement. Whatever.
Again,
and his dad walks in,
fucking insane,
and he starts to like hit him with a belt, and Freddy's like, do you want to know the secret to pain and stuff? I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Like, stop. Like, just stop while you're ahead.
Because it's like it's like pushing the narrative of like trying to like give him reasons for being the psychopath that he is.
Yeah.
And one thing that I don't really care for is the villain's origin.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I think it cheapened him, honestly. I don't think, and the worst part of that, it's one of my least favorite parts of the entire thing, because one of the things I love, the remake gets so much garbage. Things as so well. I'm actually excited. I've avoided rewatching the remake for a little while because we're going to get to it at some point on Purely and Simply Evil. I actually liked the Elm Street remake, and I liked two things that I think the Elm Street remake did very, very well. It shows us Freddy's backstory, kind of, but the flashback paints him as someone who's innocent. Like, they really killed an innocent person. He's running from the parents. He's been released. He's running from the parents. It shows them. He runs in the boiler room. He's hiding from them. He's yelling, I didn't do anything. and they're lighting Molotov cocktails, and they burn him, and it's really horrific. Like, it's really, really bad. And later on in the film, like, we go a large chunk of the film thinking, like, this is his
Freddy's
revenge for killing for being killed for something innocent. Like, this is his revenge for that. And then you realize it flips at 360 when he says to Nancy, like, you were always my favorite or something. And it's like, oh, okay, he did really do it. Like, he's a lying sack of garbage. But he did do it. But, you know, so like that is done very well.
Like, I would have taken that story, that angle seems a lot more interesting than whatever the fuck we got in Freddy's Dead.
When they show him here, he's just like in a trench coat, like pacing back and forth in the sweater, and like so stupid. Like, you see that shot, and it's actually kind of a cool shot. Like, and it's like, oh, okay, this is kind of neat. And then somebody just casually, they don't even look like they're angry. Somebody's just like, here's literally what we see. It's just a casual, like, they just, like, somebody just like throwing a piece of garbage on the ground.
There's no passion.
Like, littering. There's no passion at all. And like, it was almost like it was an afterthought, and they're like, dang, we got to go in the parking lot and film somebody lighting up a bottle of booze. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when Freddy starts to, when the boiler, like, there's flames all around him, and he's standing there, and he's going like this, and we see the little dream sperm things, like whatever, the little worm things in there, and they're like, they say something stupid like, we know what you want, blah, like, or whatever. It looks really like the old worm chocolate lady from SpongeBob.
It really did. It really did look like that.
He when he says, I want it all, and then they like go into him, and he's like, like, I'm like, are you about to become a Power Ranger? Are you constipated? Like, what's wrong, baby? How can we help you? Like, it's so stupid. I don't know how anybody was like, that's it. That's how this franchise is going to go. I don't understand how you did that, man. It cheapens when you compare that. I mean, that is think about this. In this franchise, in this timeline, that is the last thing that happened before we saw Freddy in the boiler room in part 1.
Mm-hmm. I didn't like the idea of Freddy becoming Freddy by a deal that he made with another third party demonic being. It just,
even if, go on. I'm sorry. I'm mad.
No, it was. I would just say,
I'm kind of pissed.
I was just reaffirming that, like, we've experienced Freddy all throughout all these 5 or 6 films, and it made it seem like Freddy was just this self-omnipotent, like self-diabolical villain that could do whatever he wants.
Right.
But come to the end of Freddy's Dead, and he ends up just being a lackey of these, not only just 1, but 2, but 3.
There's 3 of them.
Sleeping sperm whales. Like, why? What was the point of pushing that narrative?
Even when she puts on the 3D glasses, it's so bad. And she's like, I have to find his brain or something like that. And she goes into his brain, and the little worms are like, it's supposed to be this cool looking 3D thing, and it just looks terrible. But every time we see them, they're like, it's just like,
okay, look, the CGI were
what are we doing, man? What are we doing?
Like, we gotta understand, like, this was like next gen technology at this point, because we had 3D glasses, CGI. Like, they were really harking on that. Like, I remember what 3D movies were like, because they really wanted to push a narrative to, like, this is 3D. This is the only way you're ever gonna experience this movie, which is only gonna be in 3D. So, like, I remember those scenarios.
They pushed the 3D thing so hard. It's like 11 minutes of the movie that's in 3D.
Probably because the budget was so heavy that they couldn't do it. You know what I mean? Like, not the budget was so heavy. It was just they ran out of money, or they couldn't, like, financially do it. So they ended up just saying, like, okay, sure, let's just have it be at the very end of the film. so that at least we're using the technology.
Right.
But again, it's done horrifically.
It's
like I would be
it's
scared
terrible.
to see. I would be honestly,
Like-
dude. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind watching this film in its 3D atmosphere while high as fuck. It'd probably be a blast. Honestly, it would probably be funny as hell.
I'm sure that would be a trip. It'd probably be hysterical. Honestly, yeah. But and I you know, even if you would have said like, even if you would have had Doc Brent, because I know he had like the painting or the sculpture, whatever the hell it was on the wall. But even if you would have had him bring up like this ancient dream demon and alluded to that being like Freddy was inhabited by a demon, cool. Allude to that, then never mention it again. Like, just kind of always leave it there. Like,
it would have been cool. It would have been cool for us to talk about it.
Kind of cool. But to actually show it and like make it like he was just kind of like a host of these three things, like, no, stupid, absolutely stupid. And we should have never seen them as many times as we did. I mean, we saw them when Katherine's dreaming. We saw them in the flashback when they burn him. We saw it at the end after she blows him up, which, first of all, that's something we haven't even talked about. The ending fight sequence of this movie is just,
bro. This was a mental hospital, right?
Why? No, it was just a youth shelter, which is why they had the weapons down there. Like it was gang members and druggies that had weapons that the police never picked up. Like Doc says, you know, they were supposed to pick this stuff up. And Catherine says it's a good thing they didn't.
A crossbow.
Like, come on, like what? But the fight, it's.
What are we in? Waterworld?
Yeah, like I mean, at some point, like she's throwing ninja stars at him, and she's
all of a sudden she knows how to use ninja stars
at him. She's throwing multiple knives at him, and like actually, like she's like impaling his limbs up against this thing, and I'm like, what are we doing? And then Freddy's fighting her with the glove, and he's losing. Like she's putting up a fight. I'm like, dude, you, even before you became a supernatural entity, you were a serial killer. Like, this was kind of your whole thing. Why are you struggling right now in this fight scene? Like, you're actually struggling to fight one person hand to hand. Like, Nancy, like a small teenage girl, put up more of a fight against him than this full adult did. And and he I don't know. It seems so. The final fight sequence.
The final fight didn't
so,
seem.
It's just watered down nonsense. Like, that's all it is. It's just watered down nonsense. Like, it's all dumb. The way he goes out, the bomb, she sticks the bomb in his chest and stuff.
The final one-liner.
Kids. And then he blows up, and we see multiple versions of his head blowing up, and then we see the dream demons. It's stupid.
Bro, we saw those dream demons for like 5 minutes after he died, and that was just to be like, here's more 3D effects.
Yeah, I don't know. And then to get to the end of it, and she's just sitting like there's no coming off of that moment. She's leaning on the wall, and she just goes, "Freddy's dead." Cut. And I'm like, he just leaves you like I wonder if people in 1980 whatever, when this movie came out, in 1991, excuse me, it would have been it would have been 91. Like, I wonder if when this movie came out, people were like, at the end of it in the theater, were just like this.
What the fuck happened? Yeah. I guarantee it.
What? I know I would have been like, really? That's it? Like, that's the end of that's the end? There's no more? So I don't know. It's a fun discussion, and it's a
I wouldn't have been happy. I'm just saying, like, if I finished Freddy's Dead and I was expecting anything other than that, like, it'd be such a disappointment. And I wonder if that's how it felt whenever the film ended. Like, I mean, I'm sure this film did not get
for sure
the amount of praise that it did prior. So,
oh no, and it's a fun movie to talk about. Like, this discussion, this has been one of the whole horror highlights series that we've done so far. Like, this one has maybe been my favorite discussion we've had because it's fun. But it blows my mind that this movie was allowed to be as bad as it was. Like, it really, really does. And that's not Rachel Talalay. I'm not saying anything mean. I'm not saying anything to Robert. Even Robert's performance. Did you think Robert's performance was as great in this movie as it was?
You know, it wasn't
in previous entries.
It was fun for him, I'm sure. That's all I gotta say. Like, I'm sure it was a blast for him.
He was just having fun at this point.
Yeah.
He wasn't really trying
like,
to...
there was no attempt to, like, you know, win the hearts and minds of the Oscars.
I actually, believe it or not, I actually like him as Robert, like, as, like, human Freddy more than I do as actual burnt demon Freddy.
Which, honestly,
I found him scarier. In the moment, like, in the moment where when he kills his wife, when he kills Catherine's mom because she found his, like, murderous man cave, when he's banging her head up against the tree, and then he looks up at Katherine, and he's like, "It's okay, baby. Mommy had to take her medicine." Like, he seems genuinely creepy. Like, I'm like, you're kind of freaky in this moment. Like,
yeah, because that was like the beginning of, like, that was beginning Freddy too,
right? But then we get the moments of, like, the dancing during the death sequence, and then the chalkboard, and the pushing the spikes out in the road, and the not screaming while the bus is in motion, and it's like, just okay.
It seems odd.
All right.
It seems odd for there to be, like, two different Freddys. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, there really were, like, two different Freddys, and I felt as if they would have just kept pushing for the evil Freddy in the flashback, I feel like this film probably would have been, I don't know if it would help, but it definitely would have, like, not made the film more like a parody than an actual finale. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally agree. So
yeah,
listen, Freddy's Dead is an interesting movie. We'll leave it at that.
It's not bad. It's interesting.
It's bad. I would say it's bad. I would say it's bad.
Oh, it's bad.
It's fun to talk about because it's bad, and because some of the choices made were so interesting, as Miguel just said. So listen, let us know your favorite moments from Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. That concludes the original Elm Street series. We're still going to do New Nightmare. We're still going to do Freddy versus Jason. We'll leave the remake for and that's a story for another day. But yeah, so then we'll move on to the Halloween franchise after that, and that's going to be a big old blasty blast as well.
Sure will be.
Please let us know your top 3 moments from Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare in the comments below. Again, we're in the middle of our Oktoberfest event, our horror highlights event, where we're talking our top 3 favorite moments from a whole bunch of different horror films. We've got quite a few things coming up over the next month and a half. We've got some shopping vlogs coming your way. We've got some live streams coming your way. We'll have our Scarefest. We're going to be at Scarefest 16 in Lexington, Kentucky. So if you're going to be there, come hang out with us.
Say hi.
It's a good time. So we'll shoot our whole vlog there. There's a lot of things going on the channel right now. So, and we're super stoked about all of it. And there's other things that we actually have too that you don't even know about yet. So yeah, hope you're enjoying Oktoberfest this year. This is a blast. This horror highlights thing is really cool. So
yeah,
you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at LTM Podcast KY. Join the Facebook group, Let's Talk Movies YouTube channel -- community page as you see it on the bottom of your screen. Leave this one a like, and we will talk to you guys soon. Have an awesome rest of your night. Peace.
Peace.